flipped back and forth. Stop it. She couldn't let herself think like that anymore. She couldn't afford to. The spiders were the problem. She was learning to live without them. She had to. It had been 2.5 years. The doctors had promised her it would only take 4 months, maybe 5. But Caroline had made it hard on herself. She had refused to let Dr. Kane fuck her. He'd tried. Oh boy, had he tried. Always lingering a little too long, stroking her arm, leaning a bit too close as he muttered that he was just here to help. Smelling like liverwurst and dollar store cologne, but for some reason he had this great fucking reputation. Add it to the stockpile of reasons Caroline questioned her own sanity. She was the only person who seemed to have a problem with the kind of attention he gave her. Crazy girl needs attention, doesn't she? Crazy girl cries wolf. Cries sexual harassment. No. That asshole has tried it all on me. And he had tried. He'd tried countless times, cornering her in her room, leaning in, his fingers grazing her skin with chewed-up fingernails. Yet, something always interrupted. A fire alarm blaring out of nowhere. A patient escaping, screaming down the hall. A power outage. Someone walking in at the last second. Caroline used to think it was the 8-armed woman, the figure she used to see in the corner of the room, who was protecting her. Intervening, but she knew better than to believe that now. She couldn't allow herself to fall back into that kind of thinking. If she wanted to get out of this place, if she ever wanted to walk out of here with her life intact, she had to remember that there wasn't any 8-armed woman at all. And she had to stop blaming Kane. She had to play along, follow the program. Crazy girl, he doesn't want you. Delusional, narcissistic, spider-fucking whore. But he did want her. She knew they weren't delusions. He had tried it, and the 8-armed woman had stopped him. No, she hadn't. The tremor passed through them. The air grew colder. And then from deep within the mausoleum came a voice. Froze. Everyone froze. Leslie's heart jumped into her throat as she whipped her head toward the sound. Willie's face went ghost white. His eyes widened in terror, and he stumbled back, his breath catching. That's his voice, he whispered, his own voice cracking. He's coming for me. Without another word, Willie turned and bolted, running as fast as he could. Willie, wait, Ivy screamed after him. But Willie didn't slow down, didn't look back. The only answer was the fading sound of his frantic retreat. Leslie whipped her head around, looking at the others. Their faces were blank, stunned, each of them standing still as statues. No one moved, no one spoke. Fear had paralyzed them all, wrapping them in its suffocating grip. Jane broke the silence with a sharp huff, shaking her head. Her lips curled in what might have been disgust, or maybe amusement. It was hard to tell. Without a word, she turned on her heel and strode away, her steps unhurried, heading toward a little house on the edge of the grove. The others watched her go, but none of them followed. That night, Jane whistled to herself as she poured hot water over tea leaves, watching the steam rise from the kettle in lazy spirals. The small kitchen was dimly lit, long shadows stretching into the corners of the room. She moved with practiced ease, not in any rush, but her mind was elsewhere. A young man was on his way to see her. A sweet, soft-spoken 20-something, nervous in that endearing way boys could be when they wanted something they didn't fully understand. He was ready to lose his virgin card, and he'd come to her for that, just like many before him. After all, she was Babysitter Jane, wasn't she? The town tramp. The local whore. That's what they called her. She chuckled under her breath, the sound bitter but amused. Let them talk. Let them think what they wanted. They always had. The reality was, she had grown accustomed to the whispers of the townsfolk. They slid off her now, part of the armor she wore every day, a protection against the world she knew too well. Jane glanced out the window as she stirred her tea. Beyond the graveyard, the dense line of trees at the forest's edge was just visible in the moonlight. And there, illuminated by the soft glow, stood old Sam watching her. His figure was barely more than a silhouette, but she knew it was him. She could feel it, the weight of his gaze as familiar as ever. He was taunting her, the same way he always had, but she just chuckled, shaking her head as she brought the teacup to her lips. As if he still has any power over me. There had been a time, back when old Sam wasn't so old, when his presence in the window would have sent a shiver of fear down her spine. Back in the days when she'd been his victim. Way back when the town hadn't known him as old Sam, but as charming young Samuel Calloway. He had been strong, dangerous, taking whatever he wanted. And she was a child back then. Innocent and oh so naive. But not anymore. She sipped her tea slowly, her eyes never leaving the figure in the distance. He hadn't changed. Not really. He might be older, slower, but the same darkness clung to him like a shadow, twisting around him in ways no one else had ever seen. But Jane had. She could have left town long ago. She could have packed up, escaped the endless rumors, the judgments. But she hadn't. She stayed. Right here on the edge of the grove, where she could keep her eye on him. She wasn't stupid. She didn't underestimate him, not for a second. She knew what he was capable of, what he had done before, and what he might still do. But she wasn't afraid of him anymore. She had the upper hand now. She had lived with the knowledge of his danger for years, grown used to it, even thrived in its shadow. But more than that, she knew something he didn't, something that would be his undoing. She could feel it. As long as this octagon could be drawn together and held together, they would not be defeated by him. Old Sam would get what was coming to him. Jane set the teacup down on the table, the clink of ceramic on wood breaking the silence. She glanced again toward the window, but old Sam was already gone, melted back into the shadows of the trees. Good. Let him play his little tricks on her. Let him think he still had control. He would learn soon enough. A soft knock came at the door, and Jane smiled. She wasn't surprised. She had known he'd be on time. Elijah Loomridge, Josiah's older brother. She'd seen the way he lingered around town, the way his eyes had followed her when he thought no one was watching. She glanced at herself in the mirror. She still had it. Eli was different from other men. He was special. And Jane had every intention of keeping him close. With a knowing smile, she stepped away from the mirror, smoothing down her robe, and moved toward the door. Eli was going to get what he wanted tonight. But as Jane opened the door, Eli grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with fear. He backed her into the house and closed the door behind him. "We don't have much time," he said. "He's coming." The gravel path stretched ahead of the group, winding toward the graveyard, and Leslie felt like her mind was running in circles. The morning was cool, and the air was crisp, but none of it could cut through the confusion swirling in her head. She kept her pace with the others, Josiah, Ivy, Coop, and Willie, but it felt like she was walking in a dream, watching herself move while everything inside twisted into knots. Leslie didn't understand anything. She thought silently to herself about the secret she was harboring, that she knew in her gut she couldn't tell anyone. The night she had been lost in the woods, when old Sam had found her, she had been so scared, panicking, unsure of where she was or how to get home. And then he'd appeared, quiet and steady, his weathered hand outstretched. She'd taken it without thinking, her fear of being lost overriding everything else. Old Sam had led her home that night, through the dense trees and shadowed paths, neither of them saying a word. There had been no malice in him, no sign of the danger everyone claimed he posed to children like her. Just a silent presence that, if anything, had felt safe. But that hadn't been the end of it. After that night, whenever she was alone, walking along the back roads behind her house or anywhere else in the woods, the old man had been there too, watching. He never spoke unless she did. Then slowly, they started talking. Short conversations at first. She had kept her distance, guarded, as the whispers of what a predatory old man he was echoed in her head. But old Sam had never done anything to harm her. He'd listen when she talked about school, about Emily and her cruelty, about the loneliness that followed her around like a shadow. Old Sam had become her only friend in town, until Josiah showed up and took her to Pam's. Leslie glanced at Josiah now, walking just ahead of her, his hair catching in the breeze. There was a warmth to him, a steadiness that drew her in, a light in all the darkness she'd been swallowed by for so long. But Josiah wasn't just Josiah. He was a Loomridge. Old Sam had warned her about that family after she told him she was connecting with Josiah lately. "You can't trust a Loomridge," Old Sam had told her, his voice low and certain. "Not ever." Leslie remembered being startled by his tone. "Why not? He's been nice to me." Old Sam's eyes narrowed. "Doesn't matter how nice they seem. The Loomridge family is bad news, girl. Always have been. They take more than they give." She hadn't known what to say to that. It felt like such an unfair judgment, so harsh and final. She remembered shaking her head, trying to brush it off. "Josiah's not like that. You don't even know him." "I know enough," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "They get inside your head, make you trust them, but you'll see. Sooner or later." She wanted to believe in Josiah, in the connection she felt with this group walking beside her now. Could this feeling of belonging be trusted? Yet, they also made judgments about old Sam, the only person who had been kind to Leslie from day one. The way they talked about him, dismissing him as dangerous, reminded her of the way the kids at school talked about her. What proof did they have that old Sam was actually bad? None of them had seen him the way she had. None of them had spoken with him or listened to him. So why were they so sure he was something to be feared? Was he like the spiders in the story of the Weaver? Misunderstood? Shunned because of rumors and fear? She remembered the way the Weaver had been ostracized by the people, just like how everyone in town ostracized old Sam, pushing him to the edges of their world. But what if that fear was wrong? She kept quiet as they walked, her eyes on the gravel beneath her feet, her mind spinning. The others were talking, but she wasn't really listening, not fully. Her thoughts were louder than their voices. There was something else gnawing at her, something that made the knot in her stomach even tighter. Why wouldn't any of them tell her what their dreams had been about? When it came up, there was this uncomfortable silence, this hesitation that told her they were keeping something from her. And now, heading to the graveyard, that silence felt even louder. She knew the dreams were about her, but she wanted to know more. Wasn't she owed some kind of explanation? Leslie's pulse quickened as they passed Loomridge Haven on their right. They were growing closer to the graveyard, and her thoughts were still a chaotic mess. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Not completely. Not old Sam, not Josiah, not any of them. Not when everything felt so tangled, so uncertain. She knew the truth was out there, buried beneath layers of fear, judgment, and secrets. She just didn't know where to find it yet. They entered the graveyard. Past rows of gravestones, the Ashbury Mausoleum loomed ahead, its foreboding stone walls darkened by moss and years of weather and erosion. The iron door, heavy and rusted, hung slightly ajar, as though something or someone was already there. Leslie could feel the collective unease ripple through the group. Josiah narrowed his eyes at the door. "That shouldn't be open. Who'd come at this hour? Besides us, I mean." Willie swallowed. "Something's wrong," he said. He stared at the mausoleum, and his eyes darted between the door and the others. The fear was practically dripping off of him. He was terrified. Leslie could see it in the way his body stiffened and twitched. Coop noticed too. He glanced at Willie, then down at the axe in his hand. Leslie was suddenly grateful he had made them wait before they left, so he could get his axe from the car. Without saying a word, Coop hefted the axe over his shoulder and took a deep breath. "I'll go in first," he said, his voice firm but low. Leslie saw a flash of relief in Willie's eyes, though he said nothing and nodded. "Be careful," Ivy murmured, her voice thick with concern. Without another word, Coop strode forward, pushing the heavy door open with a groan of metal. The darkness inside swallowed him whole as he disappeared into the mausoleum. The rest of them stood there, frozen in place, holding their breath. The silence stretched out, growing more oppressive with every second. Then, cutting through the quiet like a blade, they heard it. A scream. It wasn't Coop's. Leslie's heart leapt into her throat. Ivy's hand flew to her mouth, and Willie took an involuntary step back. The scream echoed out of the mausoleum, sharp and shrill, and for a terrifying moment, Leslie's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Before anyone could move, Coop emerged from the darkness, dragging someone behind him. Leslie blinked, her brain struggling to catch up with what she was seeing. It wasn't a monster or some ghost risen from the grave. It was a woman, older, but with the dramatic flair of a lady who had gotten herself banned from bingo night and was proud of it. Her white hair was teased sky-high, her makeup smudged like a rabid raccoon, and a leopard print blouse was clinging to her like it had no choice in the matter. Her red skirt was hitched up unevenly, revealing a run in her stockings, but there was enough leg to imply the confidence of someone who absolutely did not care. Willie's face drained of color. "What were you doing in there, Jane?" "Willie, you're back," the woman mused. "I knew you'd be roped in. I just knew it." "Huh?" Willie grunted with a puzzled expression. "It's just good to see you, sugar," she winked, like she'd been waiting at a bar for him for 10 years. She dusted off her hands and scanned the group. "Whoa, y'all look like you just saw a ghost. Or worse, what the hell were you doing in there?" Josiah barked. Coop didn't drop the axe. Caught her trying to open Willie's grandfather's sarcophagus. Leslie's head snapped toward Willie. He looked like he might throw up. Jane waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, please. I wasn't trying. I was failing. It's okay, we don't all have to be good at everything." "What were you trying to do?" Leslie blurted. Jane gave her a condescending look. "Do you ask all your elders invasive questions, or am I just special?" Coop narrowed his eyes. "Enough. What were you doing?" Jane grinned suddenly, eyes sparkling. "Still a bossy boy, huh? Remember when you used to be fun? 19 years old, clueless, a total virgin. And then boom, you got lucky with me, huh?" Coop's face went red. "Jane, don't. You were just a boy, and it was adorable." She leaned closer to Josiah, whispering loudly. "He cried twice," Coop sputtered. "Jesus, Jane, oh relax," Jane said, smirking. "I'll deal with you later," he said, his voice dripping with menace. The door slammed shut, leaving Caroline sobbing in the darkness. The spiders began to stir again, their voices creeping back into her mind. They whispered, their hissing tones oddly soothing. "The boy will live." Caroline wiped her tears, trying to breathe, trying to calm down. She had to believe these words. But then, as her gaze shifted to the floor, she gasped. There, in the pool of Eli's blood, something gleamed. His lighter and a crumpled pack of cigarettes had spilled from his pocket during the struggle. But there was something else there, too. Something she'd seen before, clipped to the belts of her doctors and nurses. A T card. It was already nightfall as the double doors of Kane Hospital's backside slammed shut with a deafening crack, and Elijah Loomridge's body hit the pavement outside. Pain exploded through his body, radiating like shards of glass. He gasped, desperate for air, his vision pulsing with black spots. Dr. Elwood Kane hovered over him, the night air chilling Eli's blood-soaked skin. Dr. Kane crouched low, his face inches from Eli's. "You get caught sneaking around this hospital again, and I swear you won't leave this place alive." "Got it, fag?" Eli tried to speak, but his throat was swollen from having been choked earlier. His body trembled, muscles twitching under the strain of Dr. Kane's ass whoop. Dr. Kane smirked. "I bet you could use a hospital right about now," he continued, his voice brimming with malice. "But you check yourself in here, and I'll make sure you don't make it out. One little slip of something lethal into your IV. No one would bat an eye for a fucking waste of space like you." With that, Dr. Kane turned on his heel and disappeared into the hospital, leaving Eli sprawled on the pavement. For a long moment, Eli just lay there. Each breath felt like broken glass caught in his lungs. He could taste blood on his lips. He could feel the burn of Dr. Kane's chokehold in the back of his throat. He rolled to his side, trying to muster the strength to get up, but his body refused to cooperate. That's when he saw the spider, a small, insignificant thing moving in skittering patterns across the pavement. It paused when it reached Eli, as though it was aware of his presence. Eli watched it with a sort of detached fascination, the pain in his body fading to a dull throb as his mind fixated on the tiny creature. It crawled over his hand, then disappeared into the darkness of the parking lot. "Get up. Move." Gritting his teeth, Eli forced his hands to press down against the concrete beneath him. His legs wobbled as he got to his feet, leaning heavily against the railing of the hospital's back door. Every movement felt like his bones were in a grinder, but he had to get to Jane's. He stumbled through the parking lot but managed to find his car with moderate ease. Kane had dropped him off at just the right section of the hospital's labyrinthine parking lot. "Lucky me," he thought to himself. He opened the door and collapsed into the driver's seat. The world went hazy as he reached for the ignition. Pain wrapped at his skull, pulling him in and out of consciousness. His vision blurred. The car roared to life. Driving felt impossible, but he didn't have a choice. With trembling hands, Eli guided the car onto the road that curved its way through Mill's Edge. The streetlights stretched into long, distorted lines. His body screamed at him to give up, but his mind locked onto his destination. The Grove. Jane's house. Jane. The smell of something warm and savory hit Eli before he even opened his eyes. He blinked, the world around him coming into focus slowly. Soft light bathed the room, the faint clatter of dishes echoing from the other side of the door. For a second, he couldn't remember where he was. The pain in his body felt distant, like a bad dream he couldn't quite shake. Then he remembered. Jane had taken him in. Jane was nursing him back to health. "You're awake." Jane's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it, like she was bracing herself for something. She sat beside him, her fingers wrapped around a cup of tea, steam curling up toward her face. There was a calmness to her, but her sharp, calculating eyes betrayed worry. Eli tried to sit up, but his ribs screamed in protest. He groaned, slumping back against the bed. "Take it easy," Jane said, pushing a glass of water into his hands. "You're a mess, Eli. Drink some water," he chuckled, though the sound quickly turned into a ragged cough. "Yeah, well, you should see the other guy." Jane didn't smile. She just watched him with a poker face. She was waiting for him to take a drink. Once he did, she spoke again. "Coop and Josiah are in the kitchen," she said. The rest of the octagon didn't show. Eli's brow furrowed. He remembered the plan. Jane wanted to gather the others to get on the same page. She said things were about to get dark if they couldn't all come together. "They didn't show?" he repeated. "Why not?" Jane glanced toward the doorway, her jaw tightening. "Ivy's worried about Willie," she said after a pause. "She thinks this shit we're dealing with is going to break him. And to her credit, she may not be wrong, and she doesn't like that Caroline's involved. She doesn't want to enable the delusions." Jane chuckled. Eli shifted, wincing as the motion pulled at his wounds. "If Ivy really gave a damn, she'd have been there at Kane Hospital with me, visiting Caroline for the past 2 fucking years." Jane didn't reply right away. Instead, she set her cup down and folded her arms across her chest. "You need to focus on getting better," she said quietly. "Dinner's ready." Before Eli could say more, Jane was gone, leaving him alone with his thoughts. When he finally made his way to the kitchen, the atmosphere was thick. Jane was busying herself with setting the table, while Coop leaned back in his chair, looking more tired than the burly lumberjack usually allowed himself to appear. Josiah sat across from him, methodically cutting into his food without making eye contact. Eli sat down, wincing as his body protested. The air between the 3 boys felt heavy, awkward. Eli glanced at Coop. "So why'd you come?" he asked, his voice low. "If Ivy and Willie didn't bother?" Coop shrugged, not looking up. "They'll come around," he muttered. "They're just freaked out. But I know when something's right." His eyes finally met Eli's. "And this is right." Eli wasn't convinced, but he didn't push. He glanced at Josiah, who was still silently eating, eyes fixed on his plate. "You gonna chime in, Josiah?" Eli asked, trying to crack through the quiet. Josiah barely looked up. "Nothing to say," he replied coolly. Eli sighed. "All right," Jane said as she sat down, looking between the 3 of them. "We need to talk about old Sam." The room fell into a thick silence. Coop cracked his knuckles while Josiah sat a little straighter, his fork clinking against the plate. Jane took a deep breath. "I'll dive right in. Let's see." Old Sam's real name was Samuel Calloway. He came to town as a child, before I was born. His family was part of a traveling act. His mother was a fortune teller, and his father sold love potions, magic tricks, all kinds of novelties. They were showmen, but Sam? He wasn't just pretending. Eli listened, his body still aching, but his mind growing more alert. He hadn't heard this story before. The story he'd always heard was that old Sam was just some pedophile. Sam had real power, Jane continued, her voice steady. He was talented with witchcraft, especially when it came to controlling people's minds. They called him the puppet master. He could make people do things, horrible things, and they wouldn't even know why. Some said he could even reanimate the dead. Eli swallowed hard, dread settling in his stomach. People in town were fascinated with the Calloways, Jane said. He lingered around town, the way his eyes had followed her when he thought no one was watching. She glanced at herself in the mirror. She still had it. Eli was different from other men. He was special, and Jane had every intention of keeping him close. With a knowing smile, she stepped away from the mirror, smoothing down her robe and moved toward the door. Eli was going to get what he wanted tonight. But as Jane opened the door, Eli grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with fear. He backed her into the house and closed the door behind him. "We don't have much time," he said. "He's coming." Caroline Stronghold sat on the edge of her bed at Kane Hospital, staring up at the weird little octagon-shaped window above her, which looked more like a porthole on a sinking ship than a hospital window. It was barely big enough to let the light in, but hey, she could see a sliver of the sky through it, so that was something, proof that the outside world still existed, and that maybe one day she'd get back to it, but not today. today, she was still stuck in the psychiatric wing of Kane Hospital. Still stuck under his thumb. Dr. Elwood Kane. The man, the myth, the musty creep whose parents owned the whole hospital. He wanted her to like him, like him. And he had the legal authority to keep her locked up forever. He ran the psych ward like a kingpin in a white jacket, with a clicky pen always handy, which he often used to scratch the inside of his nose as he sexually harassed her during their sessions. What a dreamy little asshole. Caroline glanced around the room. It was a vacant shoebox, a bed and a chair. No comfort or warmth. Not that you'd expect either from a psych ward. It was as empty as it had been when she first arrived. The thought made her snicker. She'd put on quite the show when they first brought her in, thrashing and screaming, convinced this was all some terrible mistake. But they had been right about her, hadn't they? The ones who had. He felt the pieces falling into place. He could see that Josiah and Coop felt the same way. And now, Jane said, her voice steady, Sam has another chance. What do you mean? Asked Eli. Leslie, Coop interjected. Exactly, Jane confirmed. She's the next virgin sacrifice. A perfect candidate has been brought right into the heart of his domain. All Sam has to do is lure her willingly to his old house, and he can complete the curse. He can finish what he started all those years ago. Josiah sat up straighter, his jaw clenched. You mean he's going to do to her what he tried to do to you? Jane's face hardened. Yes, but this time, it'll be worse. Sam's had years to plan. He's the puppet master. He knows how to manipulate people, how to make them think they're in control. Leslie won't even realize she's being led to him until it's too late. Eli caught his brother clenching his fists under the table. So what do we do? Josiah asked. Jane looked between them all. We befriend her. We get close to her. That's the only way. If we try to scare her away from Sam, it'll backfire. She'll end up running right into him. Jane swallowed, and Eli knew what it meant. She herself had been lured willingly once. She was speaking from experience. Leslie walked through the woods, her boots sinking into the soft earth with each step. The wind was quiet tonight, barely rustling the leaves overhead, and yet she felt the unmistakable weight of eyes on her. She stopped, her breath hanging in the cool evening air, and turned slowly. There he was, old Sam, stalking her again. His shape slithered in the shadows between the trees, a hunched figure with limbs too long, moving in ways that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. He was watching her, like always. She could feel it. Leslie crossed her arms over her chest, her lips curving into a smirk despite the moderately sized knot in her stomach. You don't have to hide from me, you know, she called out, her voice sharp. By now, you should know I don't scare that easy. Old Sam stopped mid-step, his long fingers resting on the bark of a tree. His head tilted at an unnatural angle as if he were some kind of broken doll. Then he slunk out from the shadows, his face still obscured by the fading light. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Little Leslie, he said with his raspy, lingering drawl. Why don't you, I dunno, feel it? Everyone else gets that twinge, that fucking gut twist when they see me. His voice warbled as if he was genuinely confused. His long fingers twitched at his sides. Leslie shrugged, playing it casual, though her pulse quickened. I'm not an idiot, Sam. I have